I used to get horrible sleep. I would go to bed at 12 o'clock every night. It'd take me 30 minutes to an hour to fall asleep. I remember just laying there thinking, when am I going to fall asleep? Counting the hours in my head. I have to wake up at 7. That means I'm only going to get 6.5 hours of sleep. I'd finally fall asleep, but then I'd wake up within the hour and wake up 5 or 6 more times that night. And then I'd only be getting 5.5 to 6 hours of sleep. And I remember for a solid year, I just absolutely hated my sleep. And I would honestly dread going to bed every night because I knew that it wasn't going to rejuvenate me. I'd wake up more groggy in the morning. I wasn't going to have good performance. So I started doing this research because I was sick of having bad sleep, and I knew that if I changed my sleep, my whole life would get better, and everything just started to fall into place once I got my sleep right. And there were some secret tactics that I didn't even know existed before I started doing this research, and that's what I'm going to share with you in this video. So without any further ado, let's get into that. When I started my sleep journey, I had no idea the importance of light. Like, sunlight is actually one of the most important things in your sleep. And so that's what I'm going to be starting with, and I'm going to be going like throughout the day. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is morning sunlight. Morning sunlight is basically like an alarm for your body, because once you get it in your eyes, your body starts to wake up and release this natural alarm system hormone called cortisol. And if you get that light into your eyes early in the morning, then you're going to start to feel awake. If you're starting to feel like more early in the day, then you're going to start to feel sleepy more early in the afternoon, which is just going to help your sleep. Also, getting more light in the day improves your chances of getting deep sleep, sleeping for longer, not waking up as much in the night, and falling asleep faster. So the first step to getting good sleep and transforming your sleep, and how I started to transform my sleep, was that I started to wake up and I would just walk outside and view the vicinity and area around the sun. I wouldn't stare directly at the sun, such as stupid, but I would stare in the vicinity of the sun and get all that sun particles into my eyes so that I'd wake up sooner in the day, so I'd be able to sleep sooner at night. And then with evening sunlight, I know it sounds weird, but basically the opposite is true, because the sun is so low in the horizon and it's such a different shade of yellow that when you view that sunlight, your body starts to realize, oh, it's time for bed. I gotta start winding down and getting ready to sleep and getting ready to fall asleep. So the first step is morning sunlight, and then in the evening when the sun starts to set, you want to be getting your evening sunlight in your sight so that your body starts to wind down and prepare for sleep and start to perform the cycles that are required for you to get that deep sleep. Now, before I keep going at all, you have to actually need to sleep. If you're not tired and if you're not getting your activity during the day, doing things that are going to actually make you sleepy, then you can do all of these things perfectly and you still won't fall asleep. So the number one most important thing is you have to need to sleep. Imagine your body is like a phone battery. It starts out at 100% if you've gotten perfect quality sleep, and by the end of the day it should be at 0 so that you can fully recharge for the next day. Now, this battery of your body, it drains like a normal battery. Some activities, some apps drain it a lot, and some don't drain it at all. Like sitting and reading a book or watching a show will drain 5% of your whole battery for the day, maybe 15%. If you just sat for the whole day and did that, then you're definitely not going to need to sleep when your time for sleep comes. But say you do a workout, that's 50% of your battery, even though it only took 1 to 2 hours. But because it's such a hard, rigorous activity, your body has to go into a state of high performance, and your battery has to go into a state of high performance to keep up with that input so that your output can be the same level. And so then your battery drains a lot more in only a couple of hours. Another thing that drains your battery a lot is mental activity. I would say for your day, you want to be having one set physical activity and one set mental activity, and then by the time sleep comes, your battery will be fully drained and you'll be ready for that deep, peaceful, quick sleep. So our first and most important item is you have to actually need to sleep, and you need to find that one activity that drains your physical battery and that one activity that drains your mental battery. For me, my physical activity is surfing, and for my mental activity, it's creating this YouTube channel and recording these videos. So go find your 2 activities that drain your battery fully, and you'll be ready for sleep, and that when you hit that pillow and you close your eyes, the next morning you won't even remember trying to fall asleep. You'll just be out like a light. Alright, now that we've talked about you have to actually be tired, let's talk about light more in depth and detail. My family is pretty annoyed with me at night. After the sun goes down, I start turning off every switch in the house, every light, gets dimmer or fully switched off, and they'll come into a room and turn the light on to do something, and then I'll walk right behind them and turn it off, and they get so annoyed with me. But I'm like, if you want to get good, deep, quality sleep, then you have to be turning off these lights, because artificial lights are one of the worst things for your sleep. And if you have these artificial lights above your head at nighttime past the sunset, then it's going to trigger the lower 2/3 of your eyes have these little receptors, and that's how the light makes you awake during the day. But if these overhead artificial lights are going on after sunset, then your eyes are still going to be awake, and that will trigger your body to still be awake, and that can happen for 2 to 3 hours, even from just one artificial light after sunset. Your body will still think that it's daytime and still be awake 2 to 3 hours after sunset, because you had that 10 minutes of artificial light in your bottom half of your eyes after sunset. So my first tip is turn off all the artificial lights in your house, and if you can fully do it, that's great. But for me, I know that I can't fully do it because my family has to do stuff and get stuff done, and I'm not just going to be a jerk and turn off all the lights. But there is a way that you can switch this in your favor. So you want to not have the lights directly overhead and blaring. You want to have them, if you can, below your eyes, because then it hits the other cell receptors in your eyes, and it's still bad for you, but it's not quite as bad as overhead, because your body will know that it's still time for bed, but there's still light. It'd be like an hour before sunset. That's kind of the same thing as if the light is artificial and it's below your eye level. So I always turn on these lights that are below eye level of my whole family, and if you can get some lights or even flashlights or candles would be best, and put that below your eye level, and you'll just sleep so much better than if you had that bright overhead light blaring down on you. The next thing with light after you go to bed is try to use as little light as possible as is required to do your activities. Sometimes I'll be editing my videos late at night, and I could have my computer screen fully turned up all the way brightness, and that would be nice and easy on my eyes, and I wouldn't have to try hard to read the screen. But I turn it all the way down to 1. If I turned it down 1 more, then the screen would be completely black. And I also switch it to night mode so the screen gets more yellow. And I found that since I started doing this with all my screens, my sleep has just gotten a lot better. And this also applies to any other activity. If you're cleaning up around the house, just dim them as much as you can, or just get a little flashlight so that you can do the activities that you need to do, but you don't get too much of that light in your eyes so you have bad sleep. Candles are our best friend for good sleep. Lux is like the measure of brightness. The sun has like 100,000 lux or something, and then candles only have 3 to 10 lux. And after the sun goes down, you want as little lux as possible, which is basically just brightness. And candles only have 3 to 10 lux, but they still emit a lot of light. You could have a candle in the corner of your room and it illuminates what you need to do for the night, but it's only producing 3 to 10 lux, and so your eyes and your sleep aren't as affected as much as if you had a small artificial light that produces 100 to 200 lux, but it doesn't illuminate as much of the space. So another little tip is candles are our best friend, and if you can, use candles and put them below your eye level, and it only has 3 to 10 lux, so your sleep will be better, but it still illuminates a larger part than if you use artificial lights. So use the candles and your sleep will be better. I just want to reiterate the point of how bad artificial lights are for your sleep. Artificial lights, unlike candles or the sunlight, have this ability to absolutely squash your melatonin levels, and your melatonin levels are what you need to sleep. When you wake up, your melatonin levels suddenly drop, and then throughout the day they slowly start to curve back up, and they're building and they're building and they're building, and by the time you're ready to be asleep, they're almost at their peak. The peak is like maybe 2 hours after you go to sleep, and then they start to decrease and decrease and decrease. That's how you wake up again. So it's like this continual curve. But artificial lights have this ability to squash your melatonin levels. So imagine you wake up and your melatonin levels drop, and they start to increase during the day, and you're about to go to sleep and your melatonin levels are right here ready for you to sleep, and then you flip on that artificial light and your melatonin levels just go down a little bit, and you're still viewing that light, so they stay low because they know it's during the day and it's time to stay awake, and so they're still staying low. But then you turn off all the lights suddenly, and your melatonin levels are still down here when they could be up here, and so you can't go to sleep and you can't fall asleep. And that's what was happening, and that's why it was taking me so long to fall asleep a couple years ago. It was because I would view bright artificial light like an iPad screen or a phone screen or a computer screen right before I went to bed, and I would have my room lights on right before I went to bed, and so my melatonin levels would never kick in. They'd just stay steady, and then all of a sudden I'd flip my light switch off I'd be ready to go to bed and they're still down here, and then they have to go all the way back up before I can fall asleep, but I'm ready to fall asleep back here. So if you just keep that light low and you don't use artificial lights, then your sleep will be so much better. And if you do have to use artificial lights, that's okay. Everybody probably has to, but there's this thing on phones and computer screens where you can set it to night mode, which is where the screen actually gets yellower, like the sunset. And so I do this every night, and I turn it all the way down as much as I can. And so you want to be getting that night mode if you have to do that artificial light, and as dim as possible. I'll leave the Andrew Huberman little clip video down below, so he goes into much greater detail on artificial lights and how to do them best, how to use them in your environment. I've just given you a brief little summary, but go watch that video if you really want to get in depth on artificial light and how to use them best. All right, the next thing that I want to talk about is actually a secret little tactic that I found. I'd always try and read before bed, and I slowly started to find that it was easier and I liked it more to read fiction books right before bed. And so when I was having my bad sleep, I started to read these fiction books right before bed. And I have a Kindle, and I set the brightness all the way to yellow and all the way as dim as possible. And then I read until I feel sleepy and start to drift off to sleep. And I started to find that when I would do this, I wouldn't lie in bed thinking when I'm going to sleep. I would just be out like a light. So my next tip for you is to get a fiction book, not a non-fiction book, because those generally make your brain think more and you get excited about them and how you're going to implement them in your life. But a non-fiction book, like a really good story that you enjoy and love to read. Right now I'm reading Name of the Wind. I'll leave it in the description. It's an amazing book, great fiction book, and I read it every night right before I fall asleep, and I just read it until my eyes start to droop and I start to get tired, and then I turn it off and put it to the side, and I'm immediately out. The next morning, I don't even remember turning it off, and sometimes I get further ahead in the story because my brain had already switched off, but my eyes were still reading, and I'm like, I haven't even gotten to this part in the book. But I had, my brain was just already asleep, but my eyes were still reading, which is just the power of these fiction books right before you sleep. So find a fiction book, read Name of the Wind if you don't have one, right before you fall asleep. If you don't drift immediately off into sleep after reading, then close the book and think about the book and the story in your mind, and that will start to trigger your dreams and your REM cycles, and then you will go into sleep much quicker. So either way, you really want to be reading this fiction book, whether you just drift soundly to sleep, which is amazing. If you've used your battery for the whole day, you've done your physical activity and your mental activity, you've done all these other things that I've talked about, then if you read this fiction book right before you fall asleep, you'll just be out before you even stop reading. But if you don't do these things, it will still really help. You just close the book and think about the book, and maybe within 5 to 10 minutes you're asleep and out like a light. So my next tip is read the fiction book right before you fall asleep, and it cuts your time to fall asleep in half. I don't know about you, but my room is definitely not fully dark at night, and all these people say it has to be fully dark, and I totally agree with that, but it's really hard to close off every nook and cranny of your room so there's no light coming in. But I just wear a sleep mask, and I'll leave it in the description. It's a Manta sleep mask. They're really nice and block out 100% of the light. It's complete darkness, and I found that with that on, it could be like 10 o'clock in the morning, and I think it's like midnight, and I pull off my mask, and it's like blaring light, and it's just super nice to have, and you'll sleep in complete darkness, and it makes your sleep just so much better and a lot easier and simpler, that you don't have to block off every little bit of light coming into your room, and you can just put that mask on and you'll be good. So my final tip is sleep in complete darkness with a mask, or if you can get your room black, that's good, but I like a mask because you don't have to worry about the rest of your room. So just sleep in complete darkness and you'll be able to sleep so much longer and deeper and better. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you go and implement the things that I talked about, and you can transform your sleep and then your life like I did a couple years ago. And remember, you can't change your life until you change what's in here. You got this.